Hello again. Now, the brunt of rolling power cuts is being felt across all sectors. Concerns have been raised about the impact of blackouts have on construction and property. Well, let's hear more on how exactly is the property sector affected. I'm talking now to KwaZulu-Natal's FNB Commercial Property Finance Head, Malusi Mthuli. Malusi, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Generally, when we think about these power cuts and the load shedding, as we are doing today, we're looking at how it impacts you and I as normal, ordinary citizens, as well as how it's affecting businesses and stuff. But property is also being affected in more ways than one. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Dan, and good afternoon to your viewers. The commercial property market is certainly bleeding as a result of this crisis that you're obviously faced with. I think on the construction side, one can think of a number of challenges, the downtime, the delays, the increase in the building costs, and obviously the additional cost of having to provide alternative energy when building a new commercial property. All of these aspects actually add up to the challenges that the builders or the construction or the developers are actually facing out there. And again, commercial property thrives on the success of tenants. Now, you did mention that some of the businesses are battling as a result of the downtime, as a result of energy outages, and with that, obviously, the property and the landlords are obviously battling as well, because when the tenants are battling, they will be battling to also pay the rental, and when that income doesn't start to flow through, it obviously affects the commercial property investment.
And we know how much more energy is costing today than yesterday, and going into the future, those energy costs, those rising energy costs, will bring more pressure to bear on the industry.
Absolutely. The increasing energy costs are actually making it difficult for landlords out there. They can only pass on so much of these additional costs to tenants, and tenants are also squeezed to a great deal, to the extent that they cannot obviously accept these additional costs that landlords will obviously need to obviously pass on to them. So there's obviously challenges on the side of the tenant, and obviously in the end as well, it does obviously filter to the consumer as well, who's obviously buying products from some of the tenants or services from some of the businesses. So the value chain is quite long, and it obviously affects everyone in the property sector.
Yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, our energy is still cheaper than in many parts of the world, but it's getting more expensive for us, not just unreliable and unavailable as we are now experiencing these blackouts. From the property sector, what can they do, in your view? Do you have views what they can do to try and mitigate and sustain themselves and keep on being a commercially productive and profitable venture?
Look, I think the landlords and property investors that have adopted ESG or energy sustainability and obviously has ESG as top of the agenda, I think they're actually in a position to reap more rewards through the savings. I think in the longer term, the upfront costs are obviously quite high. But as I've mentioned as well, for those developers that design buildings with all these energy sustainability, aspects, do tend to, weather the storm and do tend to cushion some of the costs. And you will have obviously had, how much, energy and electricity specifically has obviously increased, through the years. And it just basically makes it that much more unaffordable, for tenants and for landlords. So it obviously creates quite a difficult, I think, situation in the system. So alternative energy is the way to go, and we're seeing a lot of our clients and obviously players in the property markets investing a great deal in providing alternative energy. And with that comes a lot of sustainable supply of energy, meaning that, the businesses that operate on these commercial properties can actually operate for longer hours and also hopefully generate better profits.
Yeah, so in the longer term, it's going to pay off. But in the shorter term, from a commercial property perspective, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. But it's the only way that you have to do now going forward to prioritize the sustainability of your business.
Without a doubt. I think in the past, when one talks of sustainable energy or alternative energy, it was more of an environmental or social consideration. But I think as things currently stand, it has obviously become a priority and quite a strategic imperative for any business to consider alternative energy and make sure that in that energy mix of any business or any property for that matter, you obviously have alternative energy. And I think by and large, alternative energy, as much as the shifts are not that significant, but I think it is becoming a lot more affordable. And I think the market is also converging to find solutions to obviously help all the participants in the commercial property market to be able to install the solar panels. We have seen with the retail industry, a lot of shopping centers are actually installing solar PVs, and it is obviously bringing about that added sustainability of trade within this particular senses. And again, this drive is also going into residential as well as industrial properties. So all in all, I think the main talking point is around how do you create sustainable energy as an alternative to the ESCOM supply or the municipal electricity supply in your place of business.
Thank you very much for your time, insights there, and talking to us today on eNCA. That's Malusi Mthuli. He's the head of FNB's Commercial Property Finance in KwaZulu-Natal.